Number 4 to the Titans. I love this. Why did you put him there?
Why not, Laura, right? Why not? I mean, you talk about Cam Ward developing into a franchise quarterback. Have this guy right in that backfield, and you can put him in a slot, you can put him wide. Touchdown waiting to happen. I always bring up that Tony Dorsett 99-yard scamper against the Vikings on a Monday night. Jeremiyah Love can do exactly that. He can go 70, 80 yards in a blink. This guy is a dynamic player. Love the fact he doesn't fumble the ball. Great ball security, great hands. Great young man. Tennessee, you could say it's a luxury pick all you want. It's not. This kid's going to come in right away, help this football team. They made a lot of additions via free agency, made the trade here and there. So the bottom line is you can look at this particular point in the draft and say, well, why not Sonny Styles? And I thought about Sonny Styles, linebacker from Ohio State, but I think Love, too versatile, too valuable. He's the best or second best player in this draft. You're picking 4. That's the kind of guy you got to select at that point.
To be clear, I do not think this is too high for Jeremiyah Love. Dan, do you think that number 4 is too high for him?
No, I've said 3. You can make the case at 3 for Arizona. I love Jeremiyah Love going to Tennessee at 4. And for everybody who's like, don't take a running back early unless he's the final piece, the most important thing in Tennessee this year is for Cam Ward to take a big step and lead into year 3 with the new stadium coming. So they sign Wan'Dale Robinson in free agency, but you now have a back that is a home run hitting back. He's Jamal Charles with a sprinkle of Jahmyr Gibbs. Great patience through the hole and then burst. Touchdown waiting to happen. Home run waiting to happen. You've got Wan'Dale Robinson, who's a nice slot receiver. You still have Calvin Ridley on the outside that's been a little bit up and down. Where's the dynamic piece for Cam Ward to take a second step at? They spent a ton of money in free agency. That's not the most important thing in Tennessee. Have a good defense. Great. That's not going to get anybody excited for your football team next year. What will is Cam Ward taking the next step. The best way for that to happen, put as many good offensive weapons around him. There's no question about it. If he's available at 4, you justify taking him.
Do you like the idea that Kyler is the long-term fix at quarterback in Minnesota? First of all, it's a bummer headline to okay. So I love how this got mapped out with first things first because we've talked about this already at length. But they've really added a whole another layer to this, and Nick is asking rhetorical questions that I'm going to answer. Because I think this actually matches up to having a great conversation. So, walk this path with me. Okay. First off, the whole strong idea, let's get some like the low-hanging fruit out of the way. The whole strong idea about Kyler Murray about what he can do is like, listen, he's had some success in Arizona. Okay, he's had some success in Arizona. He's now going to go to a significantly better situation with a significantly better quarterback. Therefore, you're just a better head coach. And so, therefore, you're going to get better quarterback play out of Kyler Murray, right? We all obviously understand that. This is as well documented as it gets in modern football these days because of all the steady examples that we keep getting. So, when Nick says, I don't understand why people think that Kyler Murray is going to have more success blah 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 blah. And it's just like, well, the most generic answer to that is, well, he's had some success in Arizona in far from ideal situation. He's now going to be with a better coach, better team. Therefore you're going to get better Kyler Murray, therefore a better Minnesota Vikings team because this Minnesota Vikings team has not gotten good quarterback play. And it's like, okay, logically we understand that. Boom. Where Nick is now taking it to the next level. And I think there's a flaw in some of this logic. Although it does, this is actually what I got most excited about because I do want to unpack this even more is the idea that hey, he was actually in a good situation in Arizona in the beginning. Cliff Kingsbury's stock was through the roof. They actually had a great roster, etc., etc. And I remember that. I remember specifically watching that season. I was actually really excited to watch Kyler Murray and I think that was the same season that oh my gosh I can't think of his name right now. Zach Z was then traded because I remember the Eagles were terrible and they were at the bottom, the essentially, bottom of the NFL in terms of, rankings, whatever the heck it is, whatever, I can't think of the phrase, and then he got sent to a first place team, right? He was essentially like last place sent to like a first place team, and it was like wow. But then Kyler got injured. I remember he was so upset he slammed his helmet down, and that's when I think they were like 8-0 or 8-1 or Lou again, I don't completely. But that was just when everything was going. Then everything kind of became a mess rather quickly that I do think Kyler deserves lots of blame for it, which is his personality as well, his mentality, his approach. I'm not going to start talking about the video game playing this, that, and the third, but I do think he was a contributing factor as to why his relationship with Cliff Kingsbury didn't work. But that team was decimated with injuries throughout over the course of the next few years that then ultimately led Cliff Kingsbury to get fired. I mean, it was just such a mess. I mean, it was every DeAndre Hopkins is getting suspended. Like, everyone's getting injured and it just all completely collapses. Kyler's in now the lineup. Kyler then is, gets actually fully injured, misses obviously a whole bunch and then comes back, and that was, I think he ended up coming back, and at that point Cliff Kingsbury is already gone. And now he's got Gannon, the defensive coach from the Eagles, as the head coach now. And he kind of comes in, I think, midway through the season, I think, is what ended up happening with Kyler for that. And then, again, it was like at that point now the Arizona Cardinals are just kind of a mess of a franchise. Questionable coaching, questionable situation, questionable roster, etc., etc., etc. But if we're just using kind of some of these prime years with Cliff Kingsbury and the Arizona Cardinals, when the roster was good enough, coaching was good enough, that we could say, okay, this is a decent enough reference point of who Kyler Murray is. There's a few problems here to just use it as like, hey, we've seen Kyler in a good situation and we saw that it wasn't good enough for this or that. You're now talking about using a reference point of when Kyler was obviously young. And now I don't even mean from just a maturity standpoint, but just from a football understanding, from a football maturity level, right? From an understanding of just how to play great football, how to be a great quarterback. He's now past that stage. It's like, okay, combined now with the maturity of understanding of like, I could see Kyler totally going into the beginning of his career and looking at a Cliff Kingsbury and just being kind of like, I'm the guy, right? Like, I'm the guy, I'm the quarterback, like I'm here to carry you. You don't carry me. Like, he clearly lacked that level of maturity that maybe he doesn't have now, right? Maybe he has a better understanding. Certainly a possibility. And so I guess it's just like you can't just use his peak production earlier on in his career as now the ultimate reference point of what you're going to be able to get. Now on the flip side of that, some of his peak production was because of his athleticism and his uniqueness to the game. What people also need to understand about Kyler Murray is that Kyler Murray, and this is true with also Deshaun Watson, these were the quarterbacks that were essentially right before the massive Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson boom. Like this was when those quarterbacks were still in a lot of ways like pretty unique, where you were just like wow, dual threat. I mean, like at this point, like who even says, why do we even say dual threat quarterback? Like everyone's technically a dual threat quarterback, but we obviously know it's a spectrum, right? We obviously know Brock Purdy's mobility is nowhere near on the level of Lamar Jackson's mobility, but the reality is that Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar specifically, those three quarterbacks essentially really kind of hit the scene pretty much simultaneously. I know it's not exactly simultaneously, but for the most part, all simultaneously. And all really showed you what football looks like when you truly have a quarterback who can do both. And not kind of a little bit of this, kind of not a little bit of that. Those quarterbacks were literally the best version of what a Michael Vick promised, for instance, but prior to them really solidifying of like this is what this peak version of football looks like. You did have the Deshaun Watson, you did have Kyler Murray, you had the baby version of it with Russell Wilson, which again is still high level. It's nothing against those other players, but it's obviously not Mahomes, it's obviously not Josh, it's obviously not Lamar, etc. And so Kyler Murray was taking advantage of that, of just a lack of football understanding in terms of the NFL as a whole, of like, what do we do with these guys? Not only what do we do with them offensively, like I don't know what to do with the Kyler Murray, which is a pro, which actually kind of helps Kyler, and that helps Hurts in terms of reputation, hurts his ability to be maximized, helps in terms of like, well, now coaches actually know what to do with these types of quarterbacks in a way that they maybe didn't even know how to do in 2015, 2014, 2013. But defenses also now understand how to exploit those types of quarterbacks in a way. And so that's the whole thing, where it's just like, if you don't evolve as a quarterback, if you don't continue to get better and better, especially in a traditional sense of quarterback play, a traditional sense of quarterback play, and not just relying on your dual threat nature and your escapability and your versatility in that regard, because you do eventually get exposed, and exposed is too strong of a word. It's just defenses just understand how to contain that aspect better in a way that they maybe didn't know how to do in 2017 or even 2018. I don't think it's necessarily a full shock that we're not seeing the same level of cartoonish performances or numbers out of Lamar, Josh, Mahomes, etc. Because again, we just understand collectively the Mike McDonalds of the NFL, the variables of the NFL. They understand how to take care of these quarterbacks in a way that they maybe did not in 2018, 2019, etc. So that alone, that was who the Kyler Murray's peak, the maximal production that we saw, the thing that got you most excited, why he was the #1 overall pick, etc., etc., was largely predicated on playing in a time when we just didn't really know what to do with these types of quarterbacks. It was just like, wow, my God, can you see what this, he can run for 80 yards and throw for 300. It was like, oh my gosh. And I just think that aspect of his game is going to be marginalized. It's going to be minimized because it's one, he's older. His athleticism is not what it once was. He is more beaten up, and your game has to evolve. The version the MVP, what did was Lamar the MVP in 2019 or 20, I think it was 2019, whatever, his first MVP version of him, when especially when I think he ended up breaking Michael Vick's record and all of that, like that version of Lamar Jackson would not work today at it would not be what puts the Ravens in the best possible position to succeed and win just. Not you see the evolution of Josh Allen's game, you see the evolution of Mahomes' game, you see the evolution of Lamar's game. It needs to evolve. You need to have a deeper, higher quality understanding of what it is to play quarterback. And I think Colin actually had a really great take about this, when he talked about like when you're younger, when you're first year, second year quarterback, relying on your athleticism, relying on your speed and strength, agility, and all of that is totally fair game and you can get away with it. But once you hit like year 2, year 3, year 4, it's not enough. It's just not enough. You reach that ceiling, or again very quickly your speed and agility starts. Michael Vick came out and said this, that like his body took a beating, and it was like, yeah, like it, he absolutely admits like it catches up to you, and it catches up to especially a player who's like 5 feet 9 inches, and so it catches up to Mahomes, it's catching up to Allen, it's catching up to Lamar, it's catching up to all of them. So, you better be able to evolve and grow at the other aspects of quarterback play. And we just fundamentally have not seen that out of Kyler. So, just like how you can use the early aspects of his career as a barometer of who he was, you can also use that against him, or you can use that for him in terms of, well, hey, he was really young and this is what he did. Just wait until he actually gets developed. Or the opposite end of like, yeah, he was really good, but it was almost during like a dated, I don't want to say a dated version of the NFL, but it was a very specific moment in time that no longer exists, quite frankly. It's just no longer the same. And yeah, when you look at the Mahomeses and the Allens and Lamars, when they really entered the NFL and were really at their peak and their absolute pure prime, their bodies were obviously in the absolute pure peak prime, right? Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson can rush for 100 yards and take an absolute beating and a week later be like, I'm totally fine. It's all good. They don't really actually have that ability anymore as much. And again, ask Michael Vick, he's been very vocal about it. Not to mention, we see those players. Obviously more run down and legitimately all injured. But even just outside of that aspect of it all, we just know that that style play doesn't reliably lead them to win week after week after week. We know that it opens up the door for some awesome moments, for insane games and moments that I'll praise Josh Allen having, 6 total touchdown, 3 passing, 3 rushing and all of that. And it's exciting. It's insane. It's just awesome to watch and witness, but reliably, week after week after week, that ain't it. That ain't it. And we know that. We absolutely positively know that, and this is coming from quarterbacks the Lamars, the Allens, and the Mahomes who know how to balance the whole dual threat nature of their game at the highest level. Like that's actually what also makes those quarterbacks so special and so historically great. Not only do they do the whole, do they have the grade. If we looked at dual threat, if we cut it right down in the middle, and this is obviously not how it works, but let's just be super generic. You got run, you got pass. Those collection of those three quarterbacks, if we look at it like in Madden level where like you're 99 and run and 99 on pass or whatever, like those quarterbacks have clearly the highest levels on both sides that we've seen combined together just in terms of raw talent, raw ability in a way that again maybe some of these other previous quarterbacks of the past just simply do not have. So, we've already seen that they just have the highest engine to get it done. But they're also really over the years have mastered the art of just understanding of how to do it and when to do it, how to bring this all together, how to keep it balanced. And they still make mistakes. Mahomes makes plenty of mistakes. Lamar makes plenty of mistakes. Allen makes plenty of mistakes. We see them all get their hand caught in the cookie jar plenty of times throughout the course of a season, multiple times throughout the course of a game. But their raw horsepower is so high that they have the ability to make up for it that the other quarterbacks that are still dual threat by nature, whether it be a Jalen Hurts, whether it be a Kyler Murray, even like a Brock Purdy, they don't have that ability to not only make up for the moments that they got their hand caught in the cookie jar, and they just find themselves being imbalanced in a way that does not give you the same quality of play that like a Josh Allen or Mahomes or Lamar can give you. And that's where you've seen the games where Kyler you're just like, or let's think of another dual threatish quarterback who's clearly just not good enough. But I'm trying to think if there's a good example of a quarterback who can kind of use his legs, can kind of throw, but obviously has never become a legitimate bona fide top of Baker Mayfield. I don't want to use Baker, but Baker is an example of this to a degree. You can see what the backup version of that looks like. A Spencer Rattler even. And again, a Spencer Rattler would theoretically be kind of more of like the worst case scenario. I'm not saying that Spencer Rattler or that Kyler Murray isn't as good as Spencer Rattler, but it's a clear example of like these quarterbacks who they can kind of do a little bit of everything, but it's not quite at the level of obviously like a Lamar, Josh Allen, or Mahomes, but we see the flavors of it. We see that they can kind of do it. So, it gives you this sense. You see that Kyler can run and jump and throw and dance and this that. So, it gives you the feeling of like this is a complete quarterback who can do it all, when in reality it's like it's the jack of all trades, master of none. It's just like, yeah, he definitely has his moments like in AR, more recent example of that. Like, you see some moments with AR, especially before he kind of really fell off a cliff with his injury and before the Colts just said, "We don't want you anymore." Are essentially like you saw moments when you're just like this guy can do some pretty spectacular stuff, but it's not complete, like it's not all there. And so I just think ultimately that's the problem you run in with Kyler. But the most defensible argument as to why you think Kyler will be legit is you look at over the course of his career and just look at what they gave you: 38 and 48, 92.22 passer rating. When you look at previous seasons like 22, 23, 24 and whatnot, and even 25, like when you look at some of his numbers, when you look at his touchdown interception ratio, when you look at his PFF rating and his passer rating and all this, you're like, this team has been a mess. He hasn't had great weapons. Sometimes he has great weapons, sometimes they're hurt, sometimes he's healthy, sometimes he's hurt, blah 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 blah. And yet he's done okay. Give him Kevin O'Connell. Give him Justin Jefferson. Give him a better team. And it's going to be elevated. It's going to be elevated. He's going to be at least a quarterback if he was shown to be the 20th quarterback over the last few years with the Arizona Cardinals in a bit of a mess of a team and whatnot. Give him the Minnesota Vikings. Give him Kevin O'Neill. He has to be at least top 50. He has to elevate at least a few spots. Unless you're just saying that the Minnesota Vikings and Kevin O'Neill are not even close to being better than the Arizona Cardinals, which that's obviously not true. So therefore, he has to be at least become a top 15 quarterback and maybe even more. And if that's the case, we're kind of living in an NFL world now where like top 15 I mean like when you start to look at the top of the top and what would 15 actually involve. That involves Sam Darnold's, Baker Mayfield's, Dak Prescott's, Brock P.S., Lamar Jackson's, Jalen Hurts. Like it involves all the quarterbacks that we've seen consistently win a lot of games. Some winning Super Bowls, some consistently getting to the playoffs. It's not like it's this boom or bust where it's like you need a top 10 quarterback, that's how you win a Super Bowl or that's how you are legitimately competitive, and if you don't, you're now the New Orleans Saints who can't even get into the playoffs, or the Carolina Panthers who obviously they just got to the playoffs with Bryce Home but before that couldn't even get to the playoffs. The Chicago Bears who obviously before Caleb Williams couldn't even get to the playoffs. The Cleveland Browns, right? Like where it's like you're either something or you're absolutely nothing. We know that's not the NFL world that we currently live in. So, it does create a messy picture, which is why the Minnesota Vikings doing this does make absolute sense. They're paying no money for this and he absolutely can be their long-term fix. If he can just prove to be competent enough, then he will supersede some of these other potential quarterbacks, especially if J.J. McCarthy proves to fundamentally be just not good enough at the quarterback position. So even the selling point of saying, hey, we could see you as a long-term answer, it all does logically make sense. Whether it actually will be the case, that really actually is at this point a question mark. I lean towards no, but I do appreciate Brew. You don't really hear them say this often where he's just like, I don't know. I'm the one that's been advocating for saying like it's okay to say I don't know. I don't know. Let's just wait and see. Let's just wait and see. And I do think all the things that I mapped out, and I know it's messy. If you're confused, it makes sense because it is kind of confusing to try to make sense of some of this type of stuff. I think it's a fascinating prospect. I'm genuinely rooting for Kyler and the Minnesota Vikings, but I on this essentially looking like a sloppier version of Baker of Baker Mayfield and the Bucks. I think that's essentially what I see it as. Or like maybe like a sloppy might not be the best word, but essentially like a little bit more of an inconsistent version of Baker and the Bucks where you definitely have some moments you definitely even get fooled a few times. We're like, alright, like I remember everybody was like, oh, Baker is as good as Josh Allen. He's better. He's a top quarterback. And then Dan Orlovsky said it where he's like, what do the Bucks need to do? Stop treating Baker Mayfield like he's Josh Allen, 'cause he's not. And that's exactly right. Even though you've seen some games where it feels like, oh, Baker put this team on his back. That it's like you're not Josh Allen. That's not who you are. No matter how much you pretend, no matter how much you think you are, no matter how much you bark and you think you can bite, you're not. And that is a problem that a Kyler Murray does have to a degree. And I think Colin had one of his best takes about Baker. And this is nothing to do about Baker. Baker is just a placeholder, but he would say about Baker that he thinks he's better than he is. He thinks he can do more than he can. And that is actually a really valid statement about some of these players, is that one of the most important skill sets you can have as an athlete and really just a human being is actually deeply understanding your strengths and your weaknesses. Actually understanding what you can and can't do. Especially at the quarterback position, there is a moment when you are faced with what do I do here? What type of throw can I get away with? Can I escape out of the pot? Like what do I do in this moment? And if you don't have a deep understanding of what you genuinely can or can't do, That's how you find yourself in mistakes that you see a quarterback where sometimes they make a throw and it's a terrible throw and it's an interception. You're like, what were you thinking? It's like they were thinking they could make that throw. I saw Carson Wentz with the Minnesota Vikings where I'm like, Carson, what are you doing? And I'm thinking to myself, he thinks that he can still make that throw, that he can make that play. That is a failure of his understanding of what he can and can't do. If he had a better understanding of what he can't do, he would be a better quarterback and more successful even just specifically with the Minnesota Vikings and Kevin O'Connell. And it's like that matters, and that's how some of these other quarterbacks are able to survive for so long. Aaron Rodgers. I saw him get called a couple times, which is normal, but Kirk Cousins, like even a Phillip Rivers, like they have a better understanding of what they can't do than an up-and-coming potential quarterback, and like a Spencer Rattler who clearly has no idea what he can't do because you see him keep making plays where you're just like, you can't make that play. I don't know why you think you can, but you simply cannot. If you actually just stop trying to do that, you would legitimately be a better quarterback. And when I see some of these other quarterbacks like the Kyler Murrays of the world, I see them struggle to do that. And that completely coincides and overlaps with the issues that we've seen out of Kyler over the years and just his belief in himself and what he can do and all this type of stuff. It all maps on and makes complete sense. Whether you can mature and grow out of that is a gigantic question mark. And it has nothing to do with he just needs to study more and he needs to not play, Call of Duty or whatever. It's just like that is connected but also a different thing entirely. So hopefully that all made sense. I was excited to have this conversation, so we did it. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Minnesota Vikings, Kyler Murray? Do you think he could be the long-term fix? Let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment. It's whether you agree with me or disagree with me. Either way, let's get to some discussions. Let's get to some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much.